The date was May 15, 1943. Somewhere in the area west of Kansas, 20-year-old Vera Hartman pushed his face onto the train glass. He had been on the move for 3 days since getting on at Camp Shanks in New York. 3 days looking at America go by. 3 days working hard to grasp what he was witnessing. Before we continue, show your support by subscribing and letting me know where you're watching from. The train eased up at another dusty stop, Amarillo, Texas. On the platform, a man in leather pants covers and a wide hat looked at the train. A genuine cowboy. Not a fake picture used for ads, not a movie star. An honest-to-goodness American cowboy making a smoke, blinking in the bright sun. Hartman and 499 more German war captives were about to step into a place that Isef Goebbels claimed was not there. They had been Afrika Korps soldiers, mostly taken at Kasserine Pass, Tunis, and Sicily. These were men who had served under Rommel, men who thought they would pass away in the desert. A new desert, a new ending. The Nazi telling machine had given them the full story of what to wait for from being held by Americans. Cruelty, bad treatment. The rough people of the New World would handle them like beasts. They had been told Americans were weak, wasteful cowboys and criminals, a country of many different groups without art or respect. The initial surprise had come on the large ships. Light-colored bread, good coffee, 3 warm meals each day. This was more food than German soldiers had eaten in months. The same amount American soldiers got as needed by the Geneva Convention rules. Now, with the train moving them farther into Texas, the things that did not make sense kept adding up. Through the windows they saw wide-open farmland, groups of cattle that went on forever, oil towers taking out black oil, towns with bright lights, smooth roads, cars all over the place. One prisoner later wrote a letter to his family. The Americans have such a great amount of everything. They even give it to their foes. Camp Hearn, Texas, 30 miles northwest of Houston, was made for 4,800 captives. In truth, it was a tiny American town placed right in the middle of the cotton-growing area. The buses from the train stop went right through the main entrance. The Germans thought they would see tall gun stands, attack dogs, and mean guards. What they got was living spaces with power and inside water pipes, warm baths, flush toilets, items many of them did not own back in Germany. The camp chief spoke to them using a translator. The guidelines were simple: work 8 hours a day. Obey the rules. Don't make a fuss. As a trade-off, 3 large meals each day, pay of 80 cents per day in camp money. Store access, fun time. Mail from home. Soldier Friedrich Becke could not believe what he was listening to. Pay. They were going to give money to prisoners, the same amount American privates made, $50 a month. The following morning, they met their job bosses, not soldiers, but ranch owners, cotton growers, cow owners. These were men in old jeans and leather boots, men who needed people to help with the picking. The American food-growing way was feeding half of the world not controlled by the Nazis, but American boys were fighting in Italy, getting ready for France. Texas cotton fields ran for miles. Without help, the cotton would spoil where it grew. The Germans were the solution to every farmer's wish. A rancher named John Davidson scanned the group of captives. He required 40 men for his cotton fields. He pointed to the largest, most able-bodied Germans. Then he did a thing that made everyone halt dead. He stepped closer, held out his hand, and told them his name. In Texas, he explained through a translator, people grab hands before they begin a job together. Officer Wilhelm Miller gazed at the outstretched hand. 6 months before, he was shooting at Americans in Tunisia. Now this man wished to shake his hand as if they were the same. He accepted it. Davidson's hold was solid, rough, the hand of a man who labors. The cotton fields of Brazos County went on for miles under the heat of the Texas sun. The work was very hard. Backs bent over, fingers cut and sore, sacks weighing 100 pounds. But something amazing took place in those fields. The German captives toiled next to Mexican traveling workers, black farmers who paid with crops, and poor white people who rented land. The group system based on race that the Nazis taught fell apart beneath the Texas sun. Everyone got wet with sweat equally. Everyone's spine hurt equally. Everyone sipped from the same container of water. At noon, Rosa Martinez, the ranch cook, rang the bell for lunch. The captives thought they would get just bread and water. Instead, there was meat soup, cornbread, sweet tea, and apple pie. Rosa could not talk in German. The captives could not talk in Spanish. but she put extra helpings on their plates and offered a friendly look. Eating is a way of speaking to everyone. Vera Hartman would keep this memory for the whole of his life. Not just because of the food, but because a Mexican woman dealt with German captives with the exact warmth she gave to everyone else. The Third Reich declared this was not possible. The Third Reich was mistaken. Saturday night at Camp Hearn, the place for fun, was full of music. Not army songs, not Nazi songs, but Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys on the radio. Western swing, the sound of America in 1943. After Italy changed teams in September 1943, Italian captives were given more rights. They were able to go to nearby dances with escorts and people watching over them. German captives looked on with longing. Some camps later let them have social gatherings that were carefully watched. Always looked over, always kept in check, but still a little bit of regular life during the war. The captives started bands, picked up American songs, and some created new ones. A weird mix of German folk tunes and Western swing music that existed only there in the world. The letters sent back home caused their own big problem. What could they put down? How could they tell about this to families going through Allied bombing? To mothers waiting in food lines, to wives who had not tasted meat in months? Friedrich Becker sent a message to his wife in Hamburg. The Americans are different from what we were told. They have given us warm clothes and strong boots. We eat meat each day. I am keeping my pay. When I return, we will have money. He left out the great amount of things that was all around him. The cars every farmer possessed. The electric lights on all night. The shops full of products. How was he supposed to? She would never have faith in him. The mail checkers would not let it pass anyway. Camp M. Lan near Amarillo. Here the cowboys were not just figures of speech. They were actual people, and they required help with many thousands of cattle. The rancher, Thomas Anderson, looked over his new helpers. Air Force pilots, tank teams, submarine sailors. Not a single one had ever been near a cow. He sighed. This is going to be quite a task. He started with the simplest lessons: how to walk up to a horse, how to keep hold of a rope, how to avoid being kicked, bitten, or stepped on. The Germans were scared stiff of the animals. The animals were unsure of the Germans. It was a shared lack of faith from the start. But Anderson was calm. His own son was flying bombers over Germany. These boys in front of him were also someone's sons. Friends or foes, they were there. And cows and bulls don't care about government rules. In a few weeks, something special took place. The Germans started doing ranch work as if they were meant to. Perhaps it was their soldier training. Perhaps it was their sharp brains that liked the planning involved in moving cattle. Perhaps it was simply that doing jobs with animals is straightforward in a way that war never felt. Soldier Erich Schmidt grew into Anderson's best rider. He could catch, mark, and care for cattle as well as anyone. At night he drew simple pictures of the land. Flat hills at sunset, long-horned cows against the sky, cowboys and Germans laboring close together, scenes that could never happen anywhere else on Earth. In 1943, on Sunday morning inside the camps, German captives held their own church meetings. Lutheran pastors and Catholic priests among the captives led the prayers. The American military gave them hymn books, religious supplies, and the right to believe freely, even for foes. Some camps made arrangements for special permissions for captives to go to local churches on special days. Christmas 1944. A small group of German captives sat in the back seats of an American church. The song was Silent Night, which was still in German. They remembered every word. By the third part, some were tearing up. Not from grief, but from the sudden realization of being seen as people in an enemy country. December 23, 1944. Camp Papago Park, Arizona. 25 submarine sailors had been digging for 3 months. Their tunnel went 178 feet past the fence. Tonight they would get away. The plan was clever but silly. Float down the Salt River to Mexico. Be free until Germany wins the war. They had put together a boat that folded up, looked at maps, and stored food. Everything was ready. Captain Littman Hanser Kraus showed the way. They came out in the Arizona desert under a full moon. Free. They ran toward the river and then stopped. The Salt River was empty. Totally dry. Not one bit of water. Just sand and rocks. The maps were from 1880, made before the dams and water systems. Their boat was worthless. Their plan was over. They spread out into the desert. In a short time, they were lost. The Arizona desert in December is ice cold at night. very hot during the day. They had no water, not enough food, and no clue where they were. Soldier Johann Kramer walked slowly into a gas station near Phoenix. He had been free for 3 days. He was sunburnt, very thirsty, and seeing things. The worker, an old man named Pete, handed him water, made him a sandwich, then called the police. While waiting, Pete shared his coffee and spoke to Kramer about his own son in the Pacific. 2 father's sons. One lost in the desert, one lost in a war. Captain Jurgen Buttenberg got the farthest, all the way to downtown Phoenix. He was sitting on Van Buren Street on January 28th when a street cleaner noticed how he spoke. The police found him tired out, missing home, and willing to go back. Even after breaking out, America was still America, full of things easy to live in and too hard to truly dislike. Spring 1945. The war in Europe was about to finish. In the camps, the feeling changed. Letters from home stopped arriving. Cities were just piles of stones. Families were broken up or dead. What was there left for them to see? Thomas Anderson said what he could give to his German cowboys. He hoped they could remain and work the ranch. He would support their move if he had the right. The pay would be very good, $100 a month plus a place to stay and food, more than they would get in Germany if Germany was even there. But the Geneva Convention was firm. Captives must be sent back to their country. No bending the rules. They had to return. But return to what? Soviet control, piles of broken buildings, no food. Ranchers all over Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona wrote to their lawmakers. These aren't just captives anymore. They're neighbors, friends, the best employees we've ever had. But the rule had to be followed. May 8, 1945, V-Day. Germany gave up. In Camp Hearn, the captives heard the radio without making a sound. Their country had disappeared. The Third Reich, which was promised to endure for 1,000 years, lasted only 12. Everything they had fought for was dust. But something new had started in these camps, on these ranches. In these churches, clear sight, being POWs. A new path that no one had thought possible. That night, John Davidson carried a bottle of whiskey to the camp. Fine bourbon made before the war. He split it with Wilhelm Miller and the Germans who had worked his fields. They drank to the war's finish, to the fallen soldiers on every side, to what lay ahead. Muller said to him, speaking through a translator who was no longer necessary, that he wished to return when he was able. America had taught him something Germany never had, that being strong doesn't mean being mean, that authority does not need hate, that foes can turn into friends while working on cotton fields and moving cows. The process of sending them back started in 1946. Trains went the opposite direction, east to the ports, ships to Europe, going back to a ruined country. But the Germans took a thing with them, understanding. Not war secrets, but something far stronger. They understood how Americans grow food, how they set things up, and how they do their jobs. They had witnessed American wealth and knew it wasn't some kind of miracle. It was ways of doing things, equipment, planning. Things that could be picked up, repeated, and changed. More vital than that, they knew Americans, not the fake pictures from propaganda. Actual Americans. Thomas Anderson showing them to ride. Rosa Martinez serving extra soup. John Davidson grabbing their hands. Pete giving a drink to a runaway captive. When they shared these stories in Germany, no one accepted them. Americans treating captives better than Germany treated its own fighters? Unbelievable. Giving them pay, showing them skills, sharing their churches. Just dreams, but the proof was everywhere. 425,000 German captives worked on American farms from 1943 to 1946. They gathered millions of dollars worth of crops, picked cotton by the ton, and saved whole fields of food that would have decayed. The American farming success that fed the Allied war effort, German captives assisted in making it happen. By 1950, something fantastic occurred. Rules for moving to the U.S. changed. Past captives were allowed to come back. 5,000 of them. They got onto ships in Hamburg and Bremen, not as captives this time, but as newcomers. They were looking for the America they had discovered while being held. A past Africa Corps sergeant came back to Texas in 1951. John Davidson was waiting at the station, the same friendly handclasp but a firmer hold. No translator was needed now. His English was flawless with a Texas drawl. He spoke like a cowboy. He got married to a local girl, opened a repair shop, and fixed tractors and farm tools. His son would attend Texas A&M to study farming. His grandson would fight in Afghanistan for the U.S. Army 82nd Airborne. The switch was finished. Another person returned to Arizona. Thomas Anderson had a job waiting for him. The best horse rider he ever trained. Later on, this man purchased his own ranch, 500 acres near Tucson, where he grew quarter horses and took home awards at state fairs. His neighbors were aware of his story. They paid no mind. In Arizona, you are looked at by how you perform, not by where you were born. Even one of the Papago Park runners came back the right way, starting a small business in Phoenix not far from the place he was caught. The strange twist of fate was clear to everyone. Many years later, former captives came back to tour the camps. They had photo albums. Young men in German army clothes figuring out how to pick cotton, how to lasso cattle, finding out that their opponents were just people. At one get-together, an old rancher stood up to talk. His voice was quieter, but his point was clear. You boys arrived here as foes. You went away as friends. You returned as family. That's the American way. That's the cowboy way. That's the human way. The hand-clapping lasted for 5 minutes, past foes hugging. Everyone in the room was crying. The data tells one story. 425,000 German captives. 700 camps spread over 46 states. Millions of dollars in farm work. 5,000 people finally coming back as newcomers. But the true tale is not in the numbers. It's in the changes. Nazi fighters turning into Texas cowboys. Foes turning into neighbors. Hate melted away by welcoming treatment. False stories broken by plain human goodness. The Germans thought they would see American savagery. They found American plenty. Not only things and money, plenty of heart. The certainty of a country so sure of itself that it could be kind to its enemies. So strong it could give forgiveness. In his very last letter from Camp Milan, one captive wrote to his mother, "The Americans are cowboys, exactly as Goebbels said. But he never told us cowboys could be nice. He never told us they would split their food, their know-how, their human nature. He never told us they would show us how to ride horses and fix farm machines. He never told us they would hold our hands. He never told us the real story about anything." The truth was easier and deeper than any false story. In the American West, German captives found something that went beyond country, beliefs, and the conflict itself. They learned that enemies are simply strangers you have not labored next to yet. That hate cannot last through a harvest. That human goodness is more powerful than any uniform. They showed up as fighters for the Third Reich. They departed as cowboys. And in the dust of Texas cotton fields, the shadows of the New Mexico plateaus and the desert sun of Arizona, they were taught the most risky lesson for a government that controls everything. They understood that their enemies were just people, and that they were also